Part 1.
You will hear a conversation between a senior librarian and a woman interested in working at the library. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
I'm interested in doing some work for the library. Are you the person to speak to?
Yes. Right. Well, what sort of work are you interested in?
Well, I've just come to live here in Australia. I don't want a full-time job until my children have settled down, but I really need to get out of the house a bit. And I heard you need voluntary workers for various projects.
Right.
But I don't know if I have the right skills.
Well, we do provide training.
Oh!
We always include an orientation to the library, together with emergency procedures. That's fire regulations, emergency exits, first aid so you can cope with accidents or sudden illness. Things like that which are necessary for anyone who's working with the public. Then we give specialist training for particular projects, like using our database system.
I do have quite good computer skills, in fact.
Oh, great.
Is there any sort of dress requirement?
Well, all staff have to wear a name badge, so they can be identified if they go outside the staff-only areas. But apart from that, there aren't many regulations. We ask you to sign in and sign out for insurance purposes, but that's all. How about transport? Do you live locally?
Well, not too far away. I'm at Porpoise Beach. My husband needs a car during the day, but it's only about 20 minutes on the bus.
In fact, we can reimburse part of your travel expenses in that case.
Oh! Would that be the same if I came by car?
No, because parking is such a problem here. One thing we are looking for, though, is someone who can drive a minibus.
No problem. So, do the projects involve going outside the library?
Some, yes, but not all. We've just finished one which involved working with photographs taken of the area 50 or 100 years ago. It basically involved what we call encapsulation.
Putting them in some sort of covers to keep them safe?
Exactly. It's time-consuming work, and we were very grateful to have help with it. Then, sometime next year, we're hoping to begin working on an initiative involving the sorting and labelling of objects relating to local history. We'll be needing help with the cataloguing.
Oh, I'd definitely be interested. How about at present?
Well, we have a small team who work to support those who are unable to read.
Working with the blind?
Yes, or other groups who have reading difficulties. We provide volunteers with equipment so that they can take books home with them and read them aloud onto CDs. We're gradually building up a collection that can be lent to those who need them.
I can see it would be useful, but I'd really like to do some sort of work where I can get the chance to meet people. How about reading stories to children?
That's done by our regular staff. But we do have another project. It's a very long-established scheme which involves helping those who are unable to have direct access to the library.
Oh, I noticed someone with a trolley of books when I was at the hospital last week. That sort of thing.
That would have been one of ours, yes. It's one of our most popular services. Lots of people who wouldn't dream of going to the library normally, or when they're at home, borrow a book when the trolley comes round the ward.
I can imagine. Yes, I'd definitely be interested in that. Right, so how do I enrol?
Well, we do ask all volunteers to commit themselves to a regular period each week.
I could probably do 5 or 6 hours.
Oh, be careful not to take on too much. But we do need someone for a couple of afternoons, from 2 to 4, so 4 hours altogether.
That sounds fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10 Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Right, so here's the application form. It asks the usual questions, name and address and telephone number. You also need to fill in details of who we should get in touch with in case of any accident or problem like that. We do need to have that filled in. And there's a space for date of birth, but that's only if you're over 75, so we won't worry about that.
No. Oh, it asks for qualifications. Do I need to provide certificates?
They're not necessary. We'll need the names of 2 referees, not relatives or family members, obviously. What else? Signature of parent or guardian. That won't be necessary, as I assume you're over 18.
Yes. What's this? It says civil conviction check.
That's a document we have to provide by law for those working on projects involving children, so we won't need it in your case. But you will need to sign this separate document. That's a copy of commitment. It's basically an agreement to work according to the library guidelines. So, if you'd like to fill this all in, you can do it here or take it home, whichever you prefer.
I'll take it home if that's okay. Right, well, thank you for your...
That is the end of part 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Part 2.
You will hear a woman giving a speech about a charity-run school in Tanzania in Africa. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully to the speech and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having invited me here today to speak about something which is very important to me. My name is Janet Rivers, and as you already know from the advertising posters around the building and communal emails, I mean to talk about the Moloto School for Girls in eastern Tanzania. Let me tell you a little bit about the background of our school. Moloto School for Girls has been in operation for only 4 years. It began due to a lucky meeting between Mr. Ben Mwanza, the current teacher at our school, and myself. Mr. Mwanza lives in the town of Mapanda, and he has been saddened for many years about the opportunities for girls in this area. I had been traveling around Tanzania on a budget and found myself stranded in Mapanda as I had missed my bus connection. Mr. Mwanza and I met by chance eating in the same cheap restaurant, and we soon found out that we were both teachers. After several hours of conversation, we had become inspired by mutual idealistic ideas, and I ended up staying a fortnight in Mapanda. There was another year planning, and then we opened our school doors for the first time. Let me now tell you a little about the school. We rent a classroom in a municipal building in the town. Mr. Mwanza teaches a class of 17 girls whose ages range from 12 to 16. Our resources consist of a blackboard and chalk, exercise books, ballpoint pens, textbooks, the enthusiasm of the girls, and the inspiration, imagination, and dedication of Mr. Mwanza. Our pupils do not only come from Mapanda town itself, but also from nearby communities and villages. Many of our girls have outstanding potential, which they showed in their primary education, but they lack the opportunity for secondary education due to a variety of reasons, including poverty, work, motherhood, family opposition, and a lack of secondary facilities in their area. Many of the girls not only depend on us for study at our school, but also for somewhere to stay in Mapanda, as commuting to and from the school every day would be unrealistic. This constitutes quite a remarkable commitment from our girls, as it means they have to live apart from their families, and often their own children, for considerable spans of time. As the family is a central part of society in this area of the world, the separation is a serious thing in the girls' lives.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the speech and answer questions 16 to 20.
As you can imagine, I am not here today just to inform you about the school, but to ask for money. All money raised goes towards the ongoing operations of our school. Any monies raised will go towards funding the following: Mr. Mwanza's salary, classroom rental, teaching resources such as chalk, books, pens, and textbooks, accommodation for girls staying away from their families, and support for the girls' families. The girls are often the breadwinner in the family, and if we take them away, this creates a hole in the family's finances. The families also often have to be the ones to care for the girls' children, so you can see that the commitment of the families towards their daughters' education is also immense. Our operation is basic. Only one classroom, only one teacher, only 17 pupils. There are basic materials and there are no computers. Computers are a pipe dream for 10 years in the future. But the future is what we look to. These girls can be the future in their country, and it is their education that can lead them and their families out of poverty and into a life of opportunities. Already 3 of our girls have achieved places at the area capital's university, and we are exploring avenues to continue to give financial support to these girls as their education continues. Now, does anyone have any initial questions?
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between a tutor and 2 students, Amanda and Jake. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
So, Jake and Amanda, how did the project go?
Very well, I think, Dr. Hinton. I certainly learned a lot and enjoyed myself at the same time.
Me too.
So, remind me, what was your project about?
Basically, what makes successful people? Let's call them top achievers successful.
Yes. How are they different from us? What do they do that other less successful people don't do?
Interesting. And did you come to any conclusions?
Quite a few, actually.
Good. Share some with me then.
Well, I'd always thought that a top achiever would be the sort of person who would bring work home every night and slave over it. But it appears not. Those types tend to peak early and then go into decline. They become addicted to work itself, with much less concern for results. We found that high achievers were certainly ready to work hard, but within strict limits. They knew how to relax, could leave their work at the office, prized close friends and family life, and spent a healthy amount of time with their children and friends.
There's a lesson for us all there. Anyway, go on.
It's also very important to choose a career which you enjoy, not just one that pays well or which assures you of a pension many years down the line.
Surely that's important though, Amanda.
Yes, I agree, but being happy in your work is far more important than anything else. Top achievers spend over 2/3 of their working hours on doing work they truly prefer and only 1/3 on disliked chores. They want internal satisfaction, not just external rewards such as pay rises and promotions.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now, listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Actually, in the end, they often have both, because they enjoy what they are doing, so their work is better and their rewards higher.
Yes, Jake, that certainly makes sense. Now, can I ask you something? Do high achievers, as you call them, take many risks?
Yes and no. I interviewed one business executive who told me he was able to take risks because he carefully considered how he could salvage a situation if it all went wrong. He imagined the worst that could happen, and if he could live with that, he went ahead. If not, he didn't take the chance. Other people prefer to stay in what I heard described as the comfort zone setting for security, even if it means settling for mediocrity and boredom too.
Would you call top achievers perfectionists?
Contrary to what I expected, no, I wouldn't. We came to the conclusion that a lot of ambitious and hard-working people are so obsessed with perfection that they actually turn out very little work. I happen to know a university teacher, a friend of my mother's, who has spent over 10 years preparing a study about a playwright. She is so worried that she has missed something, she still hasn't sent the manuscript to a publisher. Meanwhile, the playwright, who was at the height of his fame when the project began, has faded from public view. The woman's study, even if finally published, will interest few people.
So, what has this got to do with top achievers?
Well, top achievers are almost always free of the compulsion to be perfect. They don't think of their mistakes as failures. Instead, they learn from them, so they can do better next time.
Well, would you call them competitive?
High performers focus more on bettering their own previous efforts than on beating competitors. In fact, we, came to the conclusion that worrying too much about competitors' abilities and possible superiority can be self-defeating.
Yes, and we found that top achievers tend to be team players rather than loners. They recognise that groups can solve certain complicated problems better than individuals and are eager to let other people do part of the work.
Yes, loners, who are often over-concerned about rivals, can't delegate important work or decision-making. Their performance is limited because they must do everything themselves.
Well, it looks as if you two have done a thorough job and learned something into the bargain too. Now, there are just a couple of points I'd like to clarify with you.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Part 4.
You will hear a lecture on the ugly fruit movement as an effort to prevent food wastage. Before you listen, you have 45 seconds to read questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon. I was in such a hurry I didn't have breakfast. I'd like to show you these apples that my neighbor grew. This one's fine, but this one's an odd shape. You certainly wouldn't find it on sale at a supermarket in this country, but it tastes great. Today, I'd like to discuss food wastage and a movement attempting to address the issue. There are ugly fruit exponents throughout Europe, but I'll focus on a group in Portugal called fruta feia, which means ugly fruit. But first, some statistics. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, or the FAO, around 40% of food for human consumption is wasted globally. The direct economic impact of this is a loss of $750 billion each year. Meanwhile, every day, 870 million people worldwide go hungry. The environmental effects of food production are also astounding. In the U.S., it's estimated that the transportation of food uses 10% of the total U.S. energy budget. At the same time, food production consumes 50% of our land and 80% of our available fresh water. The single largest component of solid municipal waste, around 40%, is rotting food, and the gases that produces increase global warming. Surprisingly, food wastage in developing countries is as high as in developed ones. What differs is where the wastage occurs. In a country like Bolivia, Laos, or Zambia, food loss occurs after harvesting and during processing due to inadequate storage, poor transportation infrastructure, and warm climatic conditions. Whereas in the developed world, wastage occurs at the retail and consumer level. Consumers seldom plan their shopping, which leads to overpurchasing, or the enormous variety of supermarket food encourages impulse buying. Furthermore, consumers are strongly advised by regulatory authorities to dispose of food that may well be edible, but which has passed its use-by date. This overly cautious labeling with use-by dates is something Fruta Feia has campaigned against. The complex food rules of the European Union began in 1992 and have fueled great discontent, especially in the UK, where journalists famously lampooned bureaucrats for banning bent bananas and curved cucumbers. After such criticism, the EU did reduce its list of rules for selling fruit and vegetables from 36 to 10. The difficulty lies with retailers that reject large amounts of food due to aesthetic considerations, believing spinach has to be completely green and tomatoes perfectly spherical. Any blemish, even one that doesn't affect the edible contents, signals an item's destruction. To reduce food wastage, the FAO recommends 3 things. Priority should be given to preventing wastage in the first place by balancing production with demand. Where there is surplus, reuse by donation to needy people or to farm animals should take place. Lastly, if reuse is impossible, recycling and recovery should be pursued. Back to Portugal and Fruta Feia. Portugal, in Western Europe, is a developed nation of 10.5 million people. It joined the EU 30 years ago. In 2011, however, it was severely affected by a debt crisis, and its economy is still shaky. As a result of the debt crisis, unemployment is high, and hundreds of thousands of people have left the country. In these hard times, many Portuguese are hunting for bargains. So enter the cooperative Fruta Feia, set up in Lisbon in 2013 by Isabel Suarez. Fruta Feia has 3 aims: to feed people cheaply, to encourage EU rule-makers to overhaul use-by dates, and to subvert notions of both what is visually acceptable and what is edible. When surveyed, most people who join Fruta Feia also support local agriculture. Isabel Suarez estimates that 1/3 of Portugal's farm produce is thrown out due to artificial standards set by supermarkets. A farmer, Jose Diaz, who supplies Fruta Feia, said that from his annual production of tomatoes, 1/4 did not meet supermarket standards, so were dumped. Now, Fruta Feia buys his reject tomatoes at half the price he would sell them to a supermarket. Consequently, Fruta Feia's members also pay less for tomatoes than supermarket shoppers do. As to the myriad of regulations set by the EU, Fruta Feia does not contravene any. Its own produce is unlabeled and unpackaged. Despite this somewhat unglamorous look, it has sold more than 20 metric tons of food in Lisbon alone. Personally, even while the contribution of Fruta Feia and its 1,000 members is tiny, they are still, literally and metaphorically, eating away at the mountains of food that otherwise go to waste. And I salute that.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.